How powerful is Bran? What powers does he actually have, and how powerful will he become? Let's take a look. Hi everyone, this is Robert. Welcome to Deep Geek. If you like theories, background, history and lore about A Song of Ice and Fire, The Lord of the Rings and The Witcher, this is the place for you. Welcome. In the books, Bran has already developed an impressive array of abilities, and in the TV show, he gained even more. He started with some strange magical dreams, then seemed to be able to take control of Summer, his direwolf. Then he seemed to be able to do that to Hodor. Then he could see visions of the past and present, and even interact with them through weirwood trees. On the show, he moved beyond that to being able to seemingly go anywhere at any time without being seen, or take control of animals' bodies and learn secrets about everyone. In short, he appeared to have near-godlike abilities through the power of the old gods. Which is an impressive set of abilities, to say the least, but will he get there in the books too? Is there a limit to what he will be able to do? First of all, it's important to note that Bran's powers, though impressive, are not unique to him. If you dig through the lore in the world of Ice and Fire, you will find many others who can do what he does. What is unique, or nearly unique, is how he can do all of them with such strength and at such a young age. In the books, he is still only perhaps 10 years old at the end of A Dance with Dragons. He has not even reached puberty, has only just started his training, and he is already one of the most powerful people in the world. So let's break down his abilities. What can he do? Let's start with skin changing, or warging. This is the ability to enter the mind of an animal and control its actions. Warging is technically only used to refer to those who do it to wolves or dogs. In the world of Ice and Fire, this talent is surprisingly common among those of First Men heritage, although not all of those who have the talent develop it in any meaningful way. Bloodraven says that perhaps 1 in 1,000 can, though he may have been speaking rhetorically. In the books, we read of at least a dozen different people who can do this in some way, ranging from the Stark children, who all seem to have some kind of link to their direwolf, up to Varamir Sixskins, a wildling who, as his name implies, can inhabit the bodies of 6 different animals in addition to his own body. There's his mentor Hagon, there's Bloodraven of course, Orrel with his eagle, Borok with his boar, and so on. Not common, but also not exactly rare. All of the Stark children have the ability, and although some are showing lots of promise, Arya now seems to be able to skin change into cats as well, for example, and Rickon's bond to Shaggy Dog is also strong. Theirs appears mostly subconscious, often happening in dreams and the like. Bran can consciously go into Summer, seemingly at will, as well as now Hodor, and he is being trained to be even stronger. Bloodraven shows him how to skin change into a raven, and he spends large periods of time inside Summer, as we read. Slipping into Summer's skin had become as easy for him as slipping on a pair of breeches once had been, before his back was broken. Changing his own skin for a raven's night-black feathers had been harder, but not as hard as he had feared, not with these ravens. Before long he was flying around the cavern, weaving through the long stone teeth that hung down from the ceiling, even flapping out over the abyss and swooping down into its cold black depths. Skin changing is easy for Bran. And of course, Bran has gone even further by taking over a human's mind and controlling their body for extended periods of time. We see Varamir try to do this in the prologue to A Dance with Dragons, so he clearly thinks it's something that's possible for others, but Varamir was too weak at the time to go through with it. His intended host fought back. Hodor, on the other hand, is described as retreating, scared into a corner of his mind when Bran takes over. We see Bran try to justify to himself what he is doing. He knows it's me, he says to himself, as if that is enough reason. Make no mistake, this is not consensual. Hodor did not want Bran to push him away and do whatever he wanted with his body. When Varamir tries it himself, he knows that it is considered an abomination. The reader is left to make their own moral judgment about what is happening, but this is dark stuff indeed. In fact, it is noticeable that Bran has so far broken 2 of the 3 cardinal rules of skin changes, taking control of another human being and, as Summer, eating dead human bodies. And he shows no remorse or even an awareness that he is doing something that others might not agree with. We'll come back to that, because we should probably also note that the Stark children's direwolves are connected as pack in some way. They can sense each other's presence or absence, and through wolf dreams at the very least, see through each other's eyes at times. Bran has access to that too. So that's skin changing. But that is not the extent of Bran's powers, because his powers take their next big step forward after he arrives at the Three-Eyed Crow's cave. There he is fed a rather gruesome paste and starts his training as a greenseer, and this is what elevates him from a simple magic user to something much more other level. But let's start with looking quickly at what greenseers are, or were historically, because they were initially the wise elders, magic users and leaders of the children of the forest, not humans. They had green dreams that are true in some sense, like Jojen gets, could wog into animals, and could see through the eyes carved in weirwood trees. You can add to this a whole host of other powers recorded by legend, turning trees into warriors, casting the Hammer of the Waters, a spell that broke the land bridge between Westeros and Essos, and so on. These may or may not be true. We can perhaps look at that in other videos, but let's here look at the relationship between the weirwood trees and greenseers, because that is where Bran's powers are now expanding most swiftly. The key starting point here is that the weirwood trees across Westeros seem to all be connected, probably physically underground through a massive interconnected root system, but definitely magically, so if you access one, you can see out of the eyes of another. Although that's probably oversimplifying it. The way it is described, it is actually more like Bran, after he'd had his abilities unlocked by that weirwood paste, seems to skin change into the tree network itself, inhabiting it. Take a listen to this. "Close your eyes," said the Three-Eyed Crow. "Slip your skin as you do when you join with summer. But this time, go into the roots instead. Follow them up through the earth to the trees upon the hill, and tell me what you see." Bran closed his eyes and slipped free of his skin. Into the roots, he thought, into the weirwood, become the tree. For an instant, he could see the cavern in its black mantle, could hear the river rushing by below. Then, all at once, he was back home again. He was seeing out through the Winterfell weirwood. The second time he does it, he doesn't even seem to need to be touching the tree. He just slips into the network without even really trying, and he sees again through the Winterfell weirwood, but in the past. Again, Bloodraven has to explain what's going on. Time is different for a tree than for a man. Sun and soil and water, these are the things a weirwood understands, not days and years and centuries. For men, time is a river. We are trapped in its flow, hurtling from past to present, always in the same direction. The lives of trees are different. They root and grow and die in one place, and that river does not move them. The oak is the acorn is the oak, and the weirwood... 1,000 human years are a moment to a weirwood, and through such gates you and I may gaze into the past. So, looking through the eyes of a weirwood tree is not just a matter of looking out somewhere else at the same time. You can look out somewhere else at a different time. Bran does this through the weirwood at Winterfell, accessing its memories, years, centuries, and probably even millennia earlier. This all happens very quickly for Bran, probably even quicker than Bloodraven expected. He tries to get him to see through the eyes of the weirwood tree he is directly under, but Bran instead heads straight to seeing out of a completely different tree, years in the past. He is a natural. We should pause for a moment to acknowledge quite how rare all this is. Bloodraven says that only 1 man in 1,000 is born a skin changer, and only 1 skin changer in 1,000 is born a greenseer, which is rare enough already. But for humans to be taken in and trained by the children of the forest to develop their skills to the maximum, as appears to have happened to Bloodraven and now Bran, and for Bran to develop his skills so swiftly, this is supposed to be impressive. And everything we see of the children suggests this is a last gasp hope for them. They are almost extinct with no more greenseers of their own left. Using or teaming up with humans who have those abilities is their last hope. But again, we are venturing into areas for other videos. Because Bloodraven hints to Bran that the power at his disposal may be even greater than what we've seen him display. He says that the singers carved eyes into their heart trees to awaken them, and those are the first eyes a new greenseer learns to use. But in time, you will see well beyond the trees themselves. So, in time, and given the speed at which he is learning probably quite soon, Bran will be able to see things beyond the range of actual physical weirwoods, in the present or the past. This is an astonishing power. We don't know the limits of this yet, but it sounds like he could go anywhere in the history of Westeros and see and hear what happened. Bran will need to know what and when to look for, but no information will be off limits. Surely George R. R. Martin will use this as a way to show us what happened in some of the most pivotal moments of the story. The tourney at Harrenhal, say, the tragedy at Summerhall, the Tower of Joy, who knows where we may end up. But that is not all, because all the indications are that Bloodraven is either holding back in telling Bran some of the power available to him, or there are things that are beyond Bloodraven that probably won't be beyond Bran. In Bran's first look through the Weirwood network, he sees his father and calls out in surprise, "Winterfell." Ned looks around and calls out, "Who's there?" Ned heard something, but when Bran tells Bloodraven, he says that he heard a whisper on the wind, a rustling amongst the leaves. You cannot speak to him, try as you might. I know. I have my own ghosts, Bran. A brother that I loved, a brother that I hated, a woman I desired. Through the trees, I see them still, but no word of mine has ever reached them. The past remains the past. We can learn from it, but we cannot change it. Which seems pretty clear, but when you look through the books with an eye to times people may have heard Bran call out to them from a weirwood tree, they appear all over the place. For example, a couple of times with Theon. "Theon," a voice seemed to whisper. His head snapped up. "Who said that?" All he could see were the trees and the fog that covered them. The voice had been as faint as rustling leaves, as cold as hate. A god's voice, or a ghost's. And later, "Bran," the tree murmured. "They know. The gods know. They saw what I did." And for one strange moment it seemed as if it were Bran's face carved into the pale trunk of the weirwood, staring down at him with eyes red and wise and sad. And then Ned again. "Father." Bran's voice was a whisper in the wind, a rustle in the leaves. "Father, it's me. It's Bran. Brandon." Eddard Stark lifted his head and looked long at the weirwood, frowning, but he did not speak. And there are more examples, I can assure you. Bloodraven tells Bran that the people he talks to like that can only hear the whistling on the wind or a rustling among the leaves, which may have been the case with Ned, but Theon definitely heard his name and Bran's, and in each of those occasions Bran changes things in the past, just small things, his father turning and frowning, Theon replying. But he does change things. Bloodraven assures Bran that the past remains the past, we can learn from it, but we cannot change it. But Bran, demonstrably, can change things in the past. Small things now, but probably larger things when he actually knows what he's doing. And if we're talking about the past, then what of the future? That whole speech by Bloodraven about the Weirwood Network experiencing time differently to humans contains several hints that we aren't just talking about the past and present. To them, seasons pass in the flutter of a moth's wing, and past, present, and future are one. He describes the future as a sea of shadows, but not impermeable, and when Bran asks him a question about the future, he says that he has not seen, implying that he has seen other things in the future. And why not? Other magical types in this world see glimpses of the future, including several associated with old gods' magic, like Jojen Reed and the Ghost of High Heart. So the future also doesn't seem out of bounds for Bran, though he probably won't access it until the future rather than now, if that makes sense. But to build on all of that, what makes Bran even more special is his apparent ability to effortlessly combine these abilities. He talks to Jon through a weirwood tree while Jon is having a wolf dream, for example, and perhaps the culmination of all this is Hodor. George R. R. Martin has confirmed that the Hodor holds the door reveal will happen in the books. Not exactly like we saw on the TV show, but the principle of what Bran does clearly seems to be the same. Something like skin-changing into Hodor while instructing him to hold the door, while travelling to the past to change Hodor's past and present and future at the same time. I'm being vague here because George R. R. Martin himself was vague when asked about it in Fire Cannot Kill a Dragon by James Hibbard. It's an obscenity, he says, to go into somebody's mind. So Bran may be responsible for Hodor's simplicity due to going into his mind so powerfully that it rippled back through time. The explanation of Bran's powers, the whole question of time and causality. Can we affect the past? Is time a river you can only sail one way, or an ocean that can be affected wherever you drop into it? These are issues I want to explore in the book, but it's harder to explain in a show. At the moment, the fandom's best idea is that Bran here establishes a kind of closed time loop. He had always will have done it, so poor Hodor is locked in that loop forever. And if he can do that, how much more can he do? If he can skin change into animals and humans, is not bound by time or distance, can communicate with people in the past or maybe even the future, and can do all of this so powerfully that he can send ripples through time itself, what is there to hold him back? And he seems to be able to do most of this without anyone really knowing. Bloodraven had to ask what Bran saw through the Weirwood network. No one seems to know when he is skin-changing into Hodor. He can learn what happened in the past without anyone knowing he is there. And crucially, he seems not to care about the morality of any of this. Maybe the Hodor incident will finally make him hold back a little, but he has already committed 2 acts even Varamir considered abominations. Bloodraven doesn't seem to have much interest yet in teaching him what he shouldn't do, just telling him what he thinks he can't do, and he seems to be underestimating Bran's abilities already. I suspect George R. R. Martin would want us to compare what Bran does with animals and with Hodor to what the others do. They can control the bodies of dead animals. The legends are full of them lining up with undead giant spiders or the like, and they also seem to be able to control dead humans, the Ice Wights. But Bran does that with live animals and a live human, just taking control of them, regardless of whether they want it or not. Which is worse? Bran's astonishing abilities combined with his, understandable given his age, but still, lack of critical thinking about the impacts of what he is doing are a toxic mix. His chapters are getting darker and darker. And as George R. R. Martin says, they will lead him to exploring not just how Bran might affect the plot, but the whole question of time and causality itself in the world of Ice and Fire. If you'd like to see more A Song of Ice and Fire videos like this, there's a link to my playlist on the left of your screen now. Or to support this channel, thank you, there's a link to my Patreon page on the right of your screen. Thanks for watching. That's all for this time. I'll see you again soon.